right, we have Sean here today. All right, Sean, thank you for coming in today. Tell us a little bit
Thanks.
about yourself.
Thanks for having me, you. I grew up in Minnesota. I went to University of Denver. I have been in real estate since college. I played hockey growing up, and since college, I've been mainly involved with rural vacant land. I have been buying and selling land out in the boonies, like say, and I've also done a little bit of multifamily, done a little bit of industrial. I worked for a few syndicate private equity firms doing their underwriting and basically putting packages together for acquisitions on those sides. So I know the numbers. That's kind of what I learned in college, but I really wanted to be entrepreneurial, and that's where I found the land business, and it was a little easier form of entry into real estate than going straight into large multifamily projects.
Gotcha. So, did you study real estate in college, or what were you studying?
I did. They actually had a really good program. I did an undergraduate and a master's at University of Denver there. So they had a surprising amount of classes, and not many colleges do for what I've come to figure out.
Yeah. Okay. So, you graduated college and you just like went straight into the land industry. How did that come about? What was your initial interest with land?
Yeah, I mean, I went and worked for a few different groups. I knew I had to work on my people skills, my sales skills, and I did a few sales jobs. I did some underwriting, like I was saying, for a multifamily and an industrial group. I wanted to learn the numbers and I wanted to learn sales, so that's what I did directly after college. But I also knew that I wanted to be entrepreneurial and have something going on the side that I could be working on nights, weekends, whenever I had time. So the land business is something that I was inspired by an adjunct professor at University of Denver. He had a business where he was, entitling land, doing the whole buy a big lot, entitle it, sell it off to the home builders in smaller squares sort of thing. So
Yeah.
I saw that was a huge barrier of entry in getting into that business as well. So I just started, trying to build some equity by flipping land. So I read a few books, took a few courses, and started up my own land business.
Nice, nice. Okay. For the audience that doesn't know how land works or like the buying and selling of land and how to get entitled and all that stuff, like how does that work?
For sure. So I started buying land, just whatever the smallest barrier of entry was. I thought it would be a good idea, just put my own cash in, try and flip from a $2,000 property to a $4,000 property and continue flipping. But, I actually got my first property for free.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story. It was a lady didn't think her property was worth anything. I mean, it kind of wasn't because I was sending offers to $5,000 and under properties, and she's like, I owe the taxes on it. I really just want to move it on. I don't plan on going out there anymore. If you just pay the taxes off, you can have it. I was like, okay, all right, let's make
That's
it happen. I through this course I learned how to actually transfer the deed myself. So I made up a deed for us. I sent it to her. She notarized it. I put it in with the recorder's office at the local county, and then it was my property. I paid off the taxes, and I started marketing it the next day. So unlike the traditional buying home or buying Airbnbs like yourself, land is something you can do from wherever. And I mean, you've figured out how to do Airbnbs from wherever, which is inspiring.
yeah.
But I found it something I wanted to get into that I could do from wherever I wanted to live. And land is a kind of a complicated niche, but if you understand, it's just a very straightforward pricing. And if you focus on a certain area, everything is somewhat priced in the same price per acre range, and you can figure it out. So that's where I got involved.
I see. And where are you buying land right now, or at least at the time?
Yeah, I started buying land in Colorado because I was going to school, University of Denver, and I wanted an excuse to go to the mountains. I no longer am buying really in Colorado so much. I go to more rural areas of the country. I've bought in 15 different states at
Oh
this
wow.
point, and I, am looking for new markets all the time. So there's guys that play the infill route where they trade, small squares in the inner cities, and then there's guys like me that are going after larger parcels that people may have been holding on to for decades, and all of a sudden they are considering selling, but want a transaction done in the next month or two, or want to sell to a private party for whatever reason. So I try and be there, saying that I'm ready whenever they are. So
I see.
that's kind of how I've structured it. Yeah.
Got it. And how are you finding these owners to buy land from?
So another really cool thing that the courses taught me that I bought back in the day were how to understand the county records and where to find information on property owners. I've taken that property ownership data and sent them mailers. I've sent texts. I've gotten a hold of, I find a property that doesn't have access. Well, it's not a very marketable property for the owner or for anyone that wants to represent that property. So, I mean, I'm just in the business of getting in touch with people when it comes down to it. And if I can find a person that wants to sell their property, the first thing I do is mention to all the neighbors that, the property right next door is available to you if you want it. If not, we're going to probably bring it to the market here. If it doesn't have access, I've talked to a lot of neighbors about getting access or buying their property so that we can get all these. There's a bunch of island properties out there. When
Yeah.
you start going out in some of these rural spaces, especially where roads and county roads aren't really maintained, man, there's so much of the country that is completely inaccessible
Yeah.
because someone decided to subdivide this area and completely cut this parcel off from access to a public road. So I'm trying to solve that as we go forward. So
Gotcha. Okay. And your exit strategy is pretty much to flip the land that you buy out either into the market, or maybe do you also do like the subdividing of land to sell it to developers and stuff like that, like your professor kind of did, or?
I would like to get into that, and I would like to
Mhm.
understand the entitlement process and changing the zoning, because that's, to be honest, where a lot of value can be made is if you can
Right.
understand that process, and not a lot of people do. And there's certain ways where you can take the risk off your shoulders, optioning the property, but it comes down to having quite a bit of resources to go through that process. And you're dealing with Karen at the city council that's going to allow you to to change that zoning and allow you to build a certain way. And I like just staying out in the boonies, and whatever you want to do pretty much goes, right? I mean, there's guidelines. Every county has guidelines, and some counties are a lot more strict than others, and some states are as well.
Yeah.
What you can build, if you need sewer, if you need septic to live out there, if you can build a tiny home. So as much as I want to stay in one area, it's kind of limiting to myself. But when I do stay in one area, I really understand what the problems are in that area, or what I can actually market that property as. I mean, if you start marketing a property and they say you can go build a tiny home out there, I mean, that's like the best marketing you can do to anyone, because, or you can bring your trailer out there for 6 months of the year. Those buyers come in flocks, because
Nice.
you can't do it very many places in the
Right.
US, unfortunately. So
Interesting.
fortunately and unfortunately. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And how do you analyze like whether this land deal will be profitable, or how much to offer the owner when you're looking to buy it?
Sure. So that all comes down to the investor, and I try to take the risk off the table from the first conversation, and that first conversation is usually me sending them an offer in the mail. That is my anchor point of, hey, I'm willing to buy your property for this today.
Hmm.
A lot of people get offended by it. A lot of
Yeah.
people are like, just throw it in the trash, which, and a lot of people are like, could you come up a little bit more? And those are the people I, really want to do business with. The people that are not getting emotionally involved with the offer I just sent them, but are like, hey, I see that you're buying land. I see where, if people weren't, so worried
Right.
about being offended and taking things personally, and they were just like, hey man, I see you're buying land in the area. Like, can we meet in the middle? That conversation hardly ever happens, which is really interesting to me. But
Yeah.
I am always willing to negotiate with people, but I can't send an offer to an entire county. Like, if I took every single 5 acre count,
Hmm.
even a zip code, right? If I took
Right.
every single 5 acre in the Tallahassee zip code, or just the rural county or the rural zip code outside of Tallahassee. Like some are next to a river, some are next to a pond, some have direct road access, some are entitled vacant land, some are entitled commercial land. Like how do you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So I just try and start the conversation with, "Hey, I'm serious. Here's an offer," and I try and start a conversation that way. So
Yeah. Okay. And then is it similar to like regular real estate where you can kind of just comp like the land based off how much the other land nearby it sold for, or do you have like a already a baseline of like how much it's worth before going in?
yeah, I get a baseline, the average of what's sold in the area for the last 6 months, 12 months, price per acre. I take all the price
Hmm.
per acre in the county and the zip code. I make a formula. I basically send a percentage of that. It doesn't work. There's a pretty low response rate on the amount that I'll send out because I have to be on the safe side, right? But I try to get those offers up as much as possible because I'm trying to just at least start a conversation and show people I'm serious. But yeah, it's Zillow, it's Redfin, it's land.com, Lands of America. All these are excellent resources for understanding pricing in the area.
Yeah, got it. Okay. And is this entire operation mainly you, or do you have a team doing this or making these calls, initial calls?
Yeah, I have a team. I have a group of VAs that have helped me a lot, of which sort the data and help me with marketing. I've had gone with ebbs and flows of having an acquisition manager, someone that's been helping me have these initial conversations, vetting these people, and then I come in and I have a real conversation and tell them what I'm seeing and try and close the deal, sort of thing. Same on the sales side. Just I found that a lot of these properties, especially if they're not high demand properties, I've talked to, on average 20 to 120 people before I sell a piece of raw vacant land in the middle of nowhere.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot of tire kickers out there, and there's a lot of people that are going to ask a million questions, and then you continue to follow up with them, and they just go off in the distance, and you never hear from them again. But
Yeah.
that's sales, I suppose,
That
right?
sells. Yep. Yep. Got it. Okay. What's the most you've made on a piece of land, if you don't mind me asking?
Sure. I made 140,000 on one flip. That was my biggest flip. It was a pretty life-changing flip. So,
Yeah. Sounds like it.
yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Any deals you've lost money on or had bad experiences that I guess might teach someone else, the mistakes and stuff?
Yeah. I have never lost on a piece of land. I broke an even one time. I could have been more patient, but I just broke even. I moved it on, held on to it for a while. My whole period and my philosophy is that I just have to continue moving my cash. So, I'm not holding for more than 3 to 6 months, at the way longest 6 months. If I'm not certain about the area, or if I'm not completely sure about what I'm buying, try and I like to try and find a buyer before I close on it, right? So I extend it out 30 to 45 days. I have in my contract that I can market it, I can, assign it, all of that sort of thing. A really good example is I just had to call a lady today down in Florida, kind of where you are, or a little south of where you are. There's an area, there's these gopher tortoises, and these gopher tortoises, which I had no idea about, are protected species. And I had an infill lot in an area where these gopher tortoises are very prevalent. And I had this assignment going higher, and boom, there is a environmental study that comes back that they ordered, that, which I never would have ordered if I would have closed on it, because I had no idea about this and I
Right.
wasn't planning to build, right? But
Right.
they came back and they're like, "Hey man, there's 2 to 3 gopher tortoises burrowed into this property. There's live active burrows. We can't move forward." And I was like, man,
Right.
I just had like a $18,000 assignment contract ready to go. And they're like, "We don't even want it." I was like, "Can you give me a price where you would want it? Like maybe I can talk to the seller." They're like, "Man, we spent $150,000 on tortoise removal." And
Oh,
of course,
wow.
they're a large home builder. They're buying multiple lots a month, right?
I see. Yeah.
But they're like, just this year, the amount we've spent on tortoises is we just can't deal with it anymore. We're spending $8,000 to $9,000 per tortoise because the environmental agency wants them on a certain protected area, on the certain type of dirt that they want. It's madness. I mean, protect the tortoises, please. Protect the natural environment. I'm all about
Right.
it. But a tortoise could just come up onto your property at any point when you own it over 10 years and make it their home, and then now your $20,000 property is worth zero, right? Because you
Yeah.
have two or three tortoises, which is insane.
Wow, I've never heard of that. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for
So
sharing.
learning moments all around,
Yeah.
but that's the most recent one.
Yeah. Sounds like fun.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. So besides that, you said you were doing other items, like it's and what were the other things that you were doing?
Yeah, I got really into financial underwriting when I was at University of Denver. I took all the classes I could on understanding the numbers, understanding commercial deals, being able to underwrite, an apartment building or a warehouse, industrial warehouse facility. So I did that for a few groups for a while, and I really enjoyed it because I was able to understand, the ins and outs of the deal, if it made economical sense, what our risks were, how to put the loan package together, and all of that. And honestly, I'd love to get into that at some point down the road. But I was in the position where I wanted to be really entrepreneurial, live wherever I wanted to for a while. And I just couldn't stick with it if I wasn't in that area and working with that group in the office. So something I want to come back to is buying multifamily and underwriting these deals and doing acquisitions in that sense again. And I'm slowly starting to come back into looking for those deals, but that was a huge learning curve as values were going crazy in
Right.
17, 18, 19.
Yeah.
And I was like the guy just out of, college. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if we're ready to take this much risk. Like we're 11th year, 12th year into the average
The
10-year
cycle.
cycle. Like
Yeah.
interest rates could go anyway. If I wouldn't have done that, like for instance, what happened the last 6 months would have absolutely wrecked any deal that I would have been underwriting. But you can't project that. So
Yeah. Oh,
have you done any commercial deals or any?
I'm actually part of a fraction. Like I wouldn't even say LP. There's this group called Fractional, where you can invest with like other people into like larger
Yeah,
multifamily or commercial buildings. And so I'm like a 1% owner of like a 22 unit apartment complex in Atlanta, somewhere in Atlanta. Yeah,
very cool, very cool. Is
yeah,
that a certain app that you use, or is it a
yeah. It's called Fractional. It's like a
fractional?
I don't even know if it's an app. It's just like a web, like a some technology startup. You can get a bunch of your friends or people you trust, and you can all go together and all invest like $10,000 to $20,000 into a deal. So the only issue with that is no one's incentivized to do more. So
Right,
only certain amount of individuals will actually take the helm and lead the management, or not the management, but like lead the direction of like where they want to take it and stuff like that. So because you
right,
get no more equity by doing more. So
right. It's just kind of they're pulling money and having something pay off over a long period of time, and you know keep
yeah,
it running.
yeah, and
Makes
hopefully
sense.
like in 5 to 8 years it sells and everyone makes a little more than they would have. But I think it's a good learning experience. If you want to get into something big, it'd be good to have that as in your resume or your list of like things that you learn. So there is that.
For sure, for sure.
Nice. Okay, so right now you're mainly focused on like continue your land business, growing that side of it, or what are your
Mhm.
current ambitions for the next 5 years or 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, for sure. I will be continuing to do the land business just because of how invested I am into it. I would like to understand the entitlements and get into a position where I can go and title land, can go option land and change the use and make it more valuable just based off what the zoning and the land use is. That's something I really want to go forward. If you want to say I have one shiny object syndrome, that would be it. I've also really worked recently on closing deals, and I worked for a fund for a while. I worked for a group that was buying single family homes. I was doing underwriting for them, and recently I started working with a group that is doing novation agreements. I don't know if you're familiar. but novation and just being a dialer, being a guy that is coming in to close a motivated lead, I think is a skill that I will forever be grateful for if I continue to work on learning how to close a sale and learning how to find people's motivations and helping people through conversations. So that's my next 3 to 5 years. I would say I would continue doing those two or three things. I will be jumping back and forth to all of them because that's just the way my brain works.
Yeah,
I hardly ever put all my eggs in one basket. I do hope to kind of focus on those things going forward.
got it. Nice, nice. Okay. So are you working with someone in Sub2 right now with like helping them close deals, or is this like a separate party?
It's a separate group that I've been working with recently. So they have been doing it for, I think they've been wholesaling, but they've kind of shifted it to novation more recently just because of the environment that we are currently in. So
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay. How many hours do you spend doing that versus like your land business versus anything else?
I would say about half and half. I mean,
Oh,
I'm
really?
very busy with the land business right now because I just sent out about 30,000 offers in the last quarter. So
Jeez.
I have a larger marketing budget, which sometimes hurts me to spend, but
Yeah,
it keeps the phone ringing and keeps opportunities in front of me. And, if an opportunity comes in front of me, I got to jump at it.
yeah,
And in the meantime, I work with this group pretty much commission only to, close their deals and work on my skills and see if I can add value to them and, keep pushing their deals down the line as even if I'm just a guy on the phone following up with people,
yeah.
I'm already following up with people on a regular basis trying to buy and sell land. So, if I'm doing it with
It's,
houses also, you might as well, be
yeah,
helping another group do it. So
yeah.
that's
It's the same alley. Got it. Okay. And then I guess like for anyone that wants to get into land, like what would you recommend them do, or read a book or anything that you wish you knew when you first started?
for sure. For sure. The first book I ever read after I took that class with the adjunct professor was Dirt Rich by Mark Podolsky. And I went through their program. I then went through another land program called Land Academy. I would, highly suggest both, one or the other. They're both eye-opening ways, and they both provide huge value as far as understanding the business. They have two completely opposite strategies, and it'd be good for you to figure out which strategy you'd want to, continue to employ. But there's a lot of land gurus out there. If you go down into that world, just like there's a lot of Airbnb guys and fix and flip guys. So I would say those are two great resources to start and find who and what niche speaks closest to you. So
Got it. Oh, all right. Awesome. Thank you. And if anyone wants to connect with you, how do they reach you?
sure. The best way for me is on my website, loonbrookproperties.com. That's LOONBROOK properties.com. And if my email's there and my phone, you can reach me directly there. So I'm happy to connect with anyone that wants to do it that way.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Sean, for coming on. Yeah. Thanks for the for interview.
You absolutely. Thanks for having me.